Sign up for free Stratfor Intelligence. Simply enter your email address to receive 2 free reports each week.
The African Union and the Turkish government are both trying to negotiate a ceasefire in Libya. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi has already given the green light to an African Union proposal led by South African President Jacob Zuma on the condition that NATO first cease its airstrikes. The rebels in the east have rejected the terms of the ceasefire, sticking to their demand that Gaddafi first step down. Meanwhile, NATO forces maintain that they will continue launching airstrikes as long as Libyan civilians in the east are threatened. Clearly, the ceasefire negotiations are fraught with complications, but as time wears on, it's looking increasingly likely that the current stalemate in Libya could give way to a de facto partition between East and West. This may not be the ideal scenario for many, but it could allow the United States to avoid another costly nation-building exercise in the Islamic world, while allowing Gaddafi to remain in power, however tenuously. Each party in this conflict, whether you're talking about the Eastern rebels, Gaddafi's forces, or NATO forces, are facing considerable dilemmas in how to proceed in this military campaign. The Eastern rebels have made clear that they're not content with holding on to the East and ceding the West to Gaddafi's forces. The problem with the rebel forces is that they are severely ill-trained and ill-equipped. And if you take a look at the battles that have been taking place in the energy-critical areas of Brega, Ras Lanuf, Zawiya, and the port of Sadr, show just how difficult of a time the rebels are having in trying to push Gaddafi's forces back. And the more Gaddafi's forces deliberately pull back into built-up urban strongholds in the west, the less likely NATO forces are to provide air cover for fear of causing mass civilian casualties. Simply put, the rebels do not have the fighting power to advance westward to Tripoli. Meanwhile, Gaddafi's forces remain largely in control of the main energy-producing regions running alongside the dividing line of the country in the Gulf of Sadr region. These forces reach as far up as Ajdabiya, just below the rebel stronghold of Benghazi. Though a number of Gaddafi's tanks are being eliminated by NATO airstrikes, his forces have been able to rely on much less resource-intensive and highly mobile civilian vehicles and technicals to move their forces around and push the rebels back. Gaddafi's forces are facing heavy constraints in resupply as long as NATO forces are patrolling the seas and the skies over Libya. All in all, though, Gaddafi would be negotiating from a relative position of strength in any ceasefire negotiation. Even if Gaddafi himself is eliminated, there do appear to be enough forces loyal to him that could step in and reassert control from the West. This obviously puts NATO in a very difficult spot. As long as Gaddafi's forces have the option of pulling back into well-built-up urban strongholds, NATO will face very heavy constraints and trying to avoid the risk of blowback and causing civilian casualties. This gives Gaddafi undeniable staying power. Meanwhile, the United States is facing much more pressing and strategic concerns more eastward in the region, in the Persian Gulf region, where Iran is waiting to fill a power vacuum in Iraq as U.S. forces are drawing down there. The U.S. then may be resigning itself to the idea that it may not be getting much beyond a stalemate in Libya, and that forcing a power vacuum in the country may be a lot more trouble than it's worth. Given this reality, the task at hand for the United States and its NATO allies is to negotiate a ceasefire that could lead to a demilitarized zone dividing the country between East and West. Even then, Gaddafi is very unlikely to retreat beyond the energy-rich areas that he's currently holding on to, making any ceasefire negotiation right now more of an opportunity for Gaddafi's forces to regroup as opposed to any sort of lasting solution.